Hey, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the subject of PTSD and try and dig a little deeper into my interpretation of what's going on these days. Before I go too far, though, I wanted to take a minute and clean up any mess that I might have left saying earlier that I had, given myself a diagnosis of a mild case of post-traumatic stress disorder. It hasn't, it hasn't stopped me from, accomplishing a lot of wonderful things here in the civilian world since I've been home, and so I can't really complain too much about my struggles with it. But I know, unfortunately, there are just so many veterans out there that can't seem to handle or find a way to cope with the horrible, memories and experiences that they've had. And I believe personally, I never would have experienced or started experiencing any thoughts or feelings of post-traumatic stress disorder if I didn't have to continue to turn on the news or read stories about so many veterans, taking their own lives because they, were asked to go do a job, and that job takes an enormous toll on a human being. And then when you come home and you see these things going on, I have to scratch my head and ask myself why the elected officials, the people we've put in positions to change these kind of things, seem to not care at all. My fellow Marines will understand this, and I know this applies to all branches of the armed forces. You just do not leave a fellow veteran behind. You do what it takes. It does not matter the danger or the risk to make sure everybody comes home. I believe I can say with a relative level of certainty that during my time in service, had I have been in a position of leadership or in charge of a group of Marines, and one a day was committing suicide, I'm quite confident that the leadership structure above me would have moved to court-martial me and hand me my ass in the most expedient manner. And they should. So why is it that the leadership of Washington, our politicians, aren't held to the same account? Because it's not hard to save a veteran who's struggling with this. All he needs is to feel important. All he needs is to feel a sense of belonging and feel like that, he's got that exact same protection and security as he had when he was in active duty. And it's almost like somewhere along the ladder of leadership, on one of the rungs, it's like somebody gets to decide when leadership applies and when it doesn't. If you're going to hold a young man or a young woman to such a high level of account for the people that's under their charge, then that same account should apply to the highest levels of leadership, all the way up to the president. What's more important than the brave Americans who, put the uniform on and stand up and volunteer themselves to go defend, our freedom and our ability to be Americans and live the way we choose? And, it makes me angry to know that I got held to that account, and everybody else that I know got held to that account, and that the leadership at the highest levels don't get held to that account. If you know a veteran that's struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, just wrap your arms around them and hold them. I mean, you don't have to mean that in the physical sense, though that it can be extremely helpful. But just realize that if you love them and you feel like they're worth putting effort into, then if you can put some effort into making them feel hope and a sense of belonging and a sense of importance, then you can help them overcome this. And that's what we need our politicians to do. We need them to make this the absolute #1 top priority issue before them. I mean, I am not going to get into a bunch of politics on here, but it's very sad to me, you know, having just witnessed this presidential election, to watch all the candidates bicker like kids. I mean, my daddy's gonna beat your daddy up kind of stuff, and it's just childish. And there's so many tragic things occurring in our country, and all they want to do is stand up there and argue and complain and gripe and bitch about petty, stupid stuff. I mean, when are we gonna wake up and realize that we can't depend on those clowns anymore to stand up and fight for us? We have to stand up and fight for ourselves. We have to stand up and fight for each other. It's those are the things that cause me to feel a post-traumatic stress disorder. I know what I saw pales in comparison to what so many others had to experience, and so I'm not gonna cry about it, but it makes me mad to see 22 veterans a day committing suicide, and every time I turn on the news, you hear of another one or another ridiculous episode with the VA. I just saw one the other day where a young man pleaded with a VA to just simply change the bandages on an injury his father had, and apparently some 21 days rolled by before they did it, and he wound up, I mean, he's sick, but the wound wound up getting maggots in it, and the man died because people don't care. Everybody's so caught up in their high-speed gadgets and their phones and what's best for them, and it's just like nobody cares anymore. But I'm of the belief that most all of us veterans care. I think we care very deeply, and when we go and wage a war, which in my opinion, in hindsight, was an unnecessary war. Unnecessary in the fact that it's still going on and it shouldn't be. I mean, how is it that in the 40s we were able to wage 2 massive campaigns on opposite ends of the globe, and we were able to conclude that business in 4 years, and our veterans came home to an amazing opportunity, and you know, it's hard to deny that there was a just cause in their action, but here we are going on 16 years later on this war on terrorism, and with all of our might and all of our strength and all of our capacity, we can't seem to conclude our business with this war, and I don't understand that. So whether, you know, your time in service and your post-traumatic stress disorder has changed you a little bit or an enormous amount, I think a lot of that could be alleviated. I think a lot of that could be remedied and cured if the leadership structure of this country had the same level of honor and integrity as we did, and were held to the same account that we were held to. You see, all I ever want is fairness. I just want equality. If I get held to a certain level of account for something, then everybody above and below me should be held to that exact same level of account. And it's not hard to prevent these suicides. I mean, I know it's work, and I know it's not just a snap of a finger and it's all going to go away, but it is worth the fight. It is worth the effort on our leadership for our government to say, look, stop. We need to just halt everything, and we need to fix this problem first. It is of the utmost importance. It is issue number one. Stop complaining about all the nonsense. Just take care of your people. It's just that simple. I mean, it seems to me that the President of the United States of America, in all his might and glory, would hop in his motorcade and run down to the Department of Veteran Affairs, walk into the office of the administrator or the what is it? I don't know if it's a secretary level position or cabinet level position or what. It doesn't matter. But it's just a leadership thing. Walk into that man's office, sit down, look him in the eye and say, you have 24 hours to fix this. If you do not, I will fix you. I'll put somebody in here who will fix this. You're not doing your job, but I'm going to do mine. I'm going to hold you to account. I'm going to make you take care of these people like they deserve to be taken care of. But nobody does it. Nobody cares. Too caught up in their own nonsense. Too caught up in their own ego. Just nonsense. Anyways, it's our job. We have to stand up and fight for ourselves. We always have. We always will. And that's why we'll always prevail. I just want you to know that I'm prepared to stand up and fight with you, my fellow veterans. We got to put a stop to this nonsense. There's a need for violence, unfortunately, in this evil world we live in. But we can make that need for violence go away just by taking care of one another. By putting our egos down and offering our services and assistances to those who need it more than we do. Stand up and fight for your freedom.